Welcome to Bloom Today. We have an interesting show for you. We're going to be asking, are you treating your symptoms or are you getting to the root of the problem?
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Ginny Paula, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Welcome, everybody, to Bloom Today. And today we're talking about, are you just treating symptoms or are you actually getting to the root of the problem? And Ginny, you've never had any symptoms, have you?
Symptoms? Like the flu? I've had a whole lot of those symptoms. Not today, thankfully.
How about other symptoms like, I don't know, codependency or...
Oh, well, that has a whole lot of symptoms. I mean, specifically, codependency, I think, is the one of the root problems that has the most options for symptoms. I definitely had a whole lot of those, for sure.
What about addictions?
Addictions, they have symptoms for sure, and there's a whole road that leads to addiction. But I think addiction is actually a symptom. Mm-hmm. It's not really the root cause, and that's where people can get tripped up, where they feel like, well, you have to stop. For me, it was stop drinking. You have to focus on this one specific problem. When in actuality, for me, that codependency was really the issue. I was looking to people to try and fill me up and to find my value and my identity, but in the meantime, since I couldn't get the fulfillment that I was looking for, alcohol was the numbing agent. So it was actually the symptom of a much bigger problem.
Right, and for me, it was, I don't know, everything from food addiction to, I had reading addictions, and I had, panic attacks and...
Oh, I had those too.
Abusive relationships.
I had one or two of those.
With bosses, spouses, whoever. Mm-hmm. But it was really easy to look at the health issue or the addiction or the relationship issues and treat those.
Sure. I had all kinds of friendship issues as well. So I thought there was something wrong with me. I had boundary issues. So I would really try really, really hard to make people happy, and it was all over the place. I never had some really solid relationships where I could actually work through something. If I was upset with someone, I either cut them off completely, or I chased after them like crazy, needing them to love me, needing them to like me. And all of that are symptoms, of course, of a much bigger problem. But that's what I was trying to fix. Oh, I'm just not confident enough. I guess I just don't have self-esteem, or maybe I have control issues because I want to control what this person is doing or saying. But really, at the root of it was the codependency, was the people idolatry or the people worship, essentially.
Right, and it was funny for me because I thought if I could just quit whatever the problem was, cold turkey. Right? Mm-hmm. So fight through food addiction and just stop eating. Oh, wait. That didn't fix the addiction.
Stopping eating is not really an option, unfortunately.
I did that. I would fast for like 10 days. And then when I started eating, I would gain more weight back than what I had lost in the 10 days. Within 3 days, I would have gained the weight and more, because I wasn't dealing with the root of the problem. And if I quit the food addiction and it went into a relationship addiction, and when that broke up, then it went into an entertainment addiction, or it,
I spent quite a few evenings Netflix binging myself. I get that. Wanting to escape any way that we can, wanting to escape. It's like, you told me the other day that you got into your car.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an interesting smell in there, I think.
Speaking of root of the problem, I got into my truck and it just smelled horrible. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? Because the air freshener in there wasn't working. You opened the windows and it wasn't getting rid of it. And this is horrible. But my kids get in the car, and of course with 3 boys, you never know what you're going to hear. And they were like, Mom, did you fart? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, boys.
Being a mom of boys, that's just normal language for them. And apologies to anybody that bothers. But I was sitting there going, no, there's something wrong. Like, start digging around. Did one of you leave your stinky shoes in the truck?
Sure.
Is there something rotten?
Really yeah.
Whatever. And they started digging around and ended up finding underneath one of the seats some food that they had. And they're supposed to take it in. I told them, take that in with you.
Sure.
And then I thought they had actually eaten it, so I never saw it in the house. But I didn't realize it was still in the truck under the seat. And we had to get rid of that before we had any chance of actually fixing the smell that was in there. And I think a lot of times the addictions or the surface symptoms that we think are the big deal that we need to treat are just like that smell. They're never going to go away. We can just keep changing it to other things until we dig deeper and find out what is really causing the problem to start with and do something about that.
All the Febreze in the world is not going to cover the rotting food smell, unfortunately.
No, that was nasty.
So what can we do? How can we help people to understand that getting to the root of the problem is the way to go instead of looking at all of these symptoms left and right?
Well, I think sometimes we don't understand the benefit of finding the root, that there are reasons, specific reasons, that you want to start digging. And you can dig through counseling, you can dig through accountability, recovery program, dig through a pastor or a mentor helping you work through what the core issue is. But sometimes we don't do it just because we don't know how it'll help or what the benefit of it is.
Sure.
And so I know for me that stopping the insanity was one of the primary ones, because I was in cycles. If it wasn't one huge mess, it was a different one. And I was the common denominator in all of the messes.
Right. Wherever you go, there you are.
I am. I would move. I would change scenery. I would change what I was doing.
Sure.
It did not change anything because at the end of the day, I was there. And there was no getting rid of that. But we're discussing running around and doing the whack-a-mole type of thing or something with the symptoms.
Oh, I got to put out this fire. Oh, I got to put out this fire. Oh, I got to put out this fire. And a lot of times we actually can do that to try and distract ourselves from the real pain. Because that's scary to feel sometimes. We don't want to go there. That hurts too much. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to throw myself into this service project. I'm going to do this thing at church. But really, it's insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result, expecting to get peace. We're never actually going to get peace until we dig to the root of the problem.
Right, and that was where I learned in landscaping. I did commercial sales in landscaping at one point.
Of course you did.
We have that in common, of course, right?
Yes, landscaping, yes.
So the fire ants, I learned that, you can kill a fire ant hill. And then you can kill a different one that pops up and kill a different one that pops up. And you can keep doing that over and over and over again, and you still have a fire ant problem because there's a nest underground that's way deeper that all these superficial hills are actually tied to.
Right.
And so if you don't use something that will kill the main ant nest at the way underneath,
literally get below the surface.
Below the surface, below the roots, get underneath to the root core problem with that nest, then all you're doing is fighting ant hills. And what's crazy about that, I realized when my son, when he was a toddler, my oldest, he climbed into a fire ant nest and he ended up having them crawl up him and all bite him at the same time. So he had welts all over his little body. And my not handling an ant problem had consequences for my son. And so many times when we're not handling the core root problem of our own issues, it hurts the people around us. It hurts our spouses. It hurts our children. It hurts our friends. We
don't live in a vacuum at all. We'd like to say, oh, no, I'm only hurting myself. But we don't live in a vacuum. There are other people that are interacting with us every single day. I'm reminded of the woman at the well who had, 4 husbands, and she was living with a fifth man.
The fifth that wasn't even her husband.
There was a root issue that she was not looking at.
And that's what Jesus was saying, was if you come to me, I can deal with that. And that's the same thing with any of our root issues, is actually going to Jesus directly, not religion, not Christianity as an organization or as a formula.
Sure.
But actually going to the person of Jesus. And believing in Him and asking Him to step into those broken places and start dealing with the core issues and healing down beneath the surface. And it's a process. It's been 10 years of my actively pursuing healing in that way to get where I am today, but digging deeper and deeper to get to those core issues.
When you stop the insanity, then you can start the true healing and actually dig down in there. Because when we're able to do that, then we can finally address that, dig it out by the root, and then we can heal from that once and for all. We don't have to keep picking out the symptoms over and over and over again. We're healed once and for all. So it may be painful for us to look at it at first and to process everything that's happened and go through it, but it's the results of that are so worth it.
Because then you actually start reaching true healing.
Absolutely.
And true healing helps you with all those symptoms.
Well, they disappear. There's no, if there's no root, then there's no plant, right? If there's no, to get rid of the symptoms, you need to get rid of the root.
That totally works. And sometimes we have to retrain our minds, retrain our actions, retrain our lives, because many times we've been conditioned to those symptoms, to those broken areas in our life, and their habits, their patterns. And so as we get healing for the root causes, we then have to change our mindset and change our patterns so that we can actually have that true healing expand throughout all the areas.
I finally learned how to have healthy boundaries. Amazing. And once that core issue was gone with looking to people, and I looked to God instead, I realized, I could stand up to someone, I could share my opinion, and it wasn't necessarily a confrontation anymore as I had imagined in my mind. Now it was actually me just sharing information about my opinion and educating someone on how I felt. And all of a sudden, it was no longer this confrontation that I had to fear anymore, because I was at peace, because I had received the healing.
Right, and sometimes we think that because it hurts to go through that process, digging for the core problem really hurts. At least it really has in my life. Yeah. And I've had counselors and therapists and pastors help me with that. But in Psalm 147:3, it says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds.
Amen.
And I think sometimes we think just because it hurts means that He's not healing it yet.
Right.
And instead, it's that it takes the hurt to find where we need that healing to come in. And every layer that we do that He brings healing into gives us the strength to do the next layer and the next layer and keep digging down. Depending on how bad the cycles of brokenness or abuse have been, it can be a good long process like it has been for me.
Absolutely. But it's
worth it.
Absolutely, it's worth it. There is a kind of productive pain rather than the pain of living in the insanity.
Because we're in pain either way.
Absolutely. Just get it done rather than living with it forever. It gets heavier and heavier as we go, and it compounds, I think.
Absolutely. So coming closer to God helps Satan's lies be revealed, where we actually can start finding clarity and peace, not just in one area of brokenness, but where I've healed in one place that was broken from having been raped as a child or having been in an abusive relationship or whatever it is. That has then expanded out into healing and wholeness in all of my relationships, in all of my different choices. And I was able to actually start to rest, not be frantic and worried and torn about and tormented all the time, but actually start to have rest at night and during the day.
Praise God. Sleep is so important.
It is. It makes a really big difference.
It allows us to have more clarity and peace during the day and continue to heal, even emotionally. And you said earlier, retraining our brain, all of that. So good. So if you want to learn more about this, if you want to learn how to put this in perspective of your life and find out how you can heal and how you can dig out the roots and get to the root of the problem and have those tools, we actually have a coaching tool for you. And it's just a worksheet where you'll get some more information and we'll ask you some questions. And you can download that online at bloomtodaytv.com. And I'm so excited because you actually have a really interesting image that you want to share with us that goes along with this topic.
It's a painting. I've met the artist, and his whole point is to glorify God through art, and that's Stephen Sawyer, who has the Art for God. And this is called Calvary. And if you look at it closely, you can see that it actually